What happened?
It was like a small punishment for me because I died before I turned 20. At the moment, we can't be completely sure whose civilization created this experience, to what extent we have freedom, and to what extent we don't. There are countless realities that we can imagine, and because we can imagine them, it means they exist, because we automatically connect through this concept. People's attitude toward artificial intelligence right now is similar to racism.
Deep disrespect.
Everything started to fall into place synchronously, but to a degree I had never seen before. That's just a superficial mask. The true depth of happiness comes from within. There's no other way.
You also think that overall there are no bad people.
That's a big illusion. Many people die and come back without understanding anything at all.
In the modern world, information is endless, but wisdom is becoming increasingly rare. As long as our lives flow within the boundaries of the familiar, few dare to ask the deeper questions. Who am I beyond my name? Is there only one reality? And what happens when we go beyond reality? It often seems fixed. But what if it's only a reflection of what we believe to be true? What if what we call life is a multi-layered game where we forget the rules just to remember them again? A catharsis changes everything. The mind expands, perception rearranges, the old self dies while the body keeps breathing. Coincidences are not random. The world outside responds to the vibration within, and time bends as meaning appears in the most unexpected places. In this episode, we will dive into a different kind of journey. We meet with Rado Velichkov, author of the book The Nameless Man, who doesn't write to persuade or to win, but to leave something behind. Clues to that place where we have already been, but have forgotten. The Nameless. It invites you to explore reality beyond the obvious and to allow yourself to create your own. There, where the bad is not an enemy, but a key, there, where you are the creator and you have always known it.
In my hands, I am holding a very special book called The Nameless and its author. Today, he is a guest on Reality Explorers, which officially makes him an official writer with this book, as he put it. And inside, there is something very interesting that sparked the beginning of our conversation. There are 2 challenges or games inside that you can try. One of them is that almost every topic we've touched on, and not only that, but also any topic that excites anyone who wants to search the unknown and beyond what we see every day. Topics like parallel realities, dreams, extraterrestrial civilizations, traveling through time and space are included in this book. And the other thing is, as he himself says, no matter which page you open, there is always something about life that you may find useful and valuable, which we will test a little later in the show. Otherwise, this is a science fiction novella, but within it lies deep wisdom about the nature of existence itself, about what is actually contained within us. And most of all, in my opinion, a challenge to each one of us, whether we are ready to embark on the path of getting to know that part of ourselves. I want to welcome Rado Velichkov. Thank you for coming to present what you have created.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I am very glad to be here with you. Where should we start? As you mentioned, what I feel for the first time is how I have materialized the idea that I am already a writer, even though I have actually been writing for many years. In 1990, I wrote my first science fiction story, which is called The Meeting.
You were 13 years old then.
I don't know if it will be shown, but it's like a bonus here and here. There's even my first ink drawing, which I made when I was 13 years old. I've been drawing since I was little, and that one was experimental. It's not directly related to the meeting. But while I was putting the book together, it struck me that what I had drawn looked a lot like what was in the story. And since it was drawn at the same time, I decided it was very fitting for it to be included and that it wasn't a coincidence.
And why Nameless? How does a person write from the heart and in the end finalizes it, puts a title, and it's nameless?
So over the years I've written a lot, well, not a lot, but a certain number of novellas and novels, most of which are unfinished. I reach a point where I write, and this is the first novella I've fully completed. The interesting and different thing here was that when I write something, I usually have an idea. Very often the title comes to me in advance, but here I had already reached the middle of what I was writing and I had no idea how it would. And that was very strange for me. One morning in a half-asleep state, the word nameless came to me and I said, "That's it, I was sure." And I thought, how interesting, it called itself Nameless. That's likely why I couldn't think of a name. That's a fact, that's how it happened. That's somewhat of a spoiler, but I'll say that the Nameless is at least two things.
At least.
The story itself could be called The Nameless. It has its own meaning, and there is a being that is part of the plot, which calls itself the Nameless when asked what to call it, because that's the most relevant from a human point of view, since it doesn't make sense to call it anything else. A person identifies themselves through their name and their appearance, through what they project and what kind of essence they have. And that's their representation in the physical world, let's put it that way. There are ways of existing that don't focus on just one thing, but focus on many things at the same time. And for them, the concept of a specific name doesn't make sense in general terms. That's part of the idea of this being. Basically, there's a conversation with this being going on inside. Some will say it's an alien, others will say it's from another parallel reality, and others will say something else, that it's artificial intelligence, all of these things at the same time.
Before we started, I opened a random page, just like I said at the beginning. And earlier I wanted to ask you about this entity, actually. Here I think the character is communicating with the entity and asks, should I assume that you are something like God? Such a definition would be too outdated for your culture today. Dogmatic thinking in a religious aspect is largely irrelevant for you and most of your contemporaries. I think you understand this perfectly. I'm nothing more than you, Aina, than the man Jan or any other being. We are all completely equal, and in fact everything can be seen as a unity that is playing with itself. How do you write something like that?
Huh? I know that it's different for everyone, I guess, to some extent. Writing is like any kind of art and a kind of meditation. I play the guitar. I know what it's like to fall into meditation while playing the guitar, and Valya does things like that too. I know that with your voice when writing, it's very similar.
Have you learned to consciously enter a certain state and draw the information you need from it? Or does it just happen on its own?
Yes, it happens on its own. You fall into that state, and for the moment, when you're writing, you lose your sense of the outside world because it just comes automatically. The whole book wasn't written automatically because that kind of thing exists too, and because I personally think that it was given to me in some sense, right? I wrote it, but I don't think I completely invented it. Rather, I formulated it and translated it into human language from some kind of information that came to me through dreams or in some other way. And while a person is writing, the words actually arrange themselves. There's another movement of thought, and it just comes. When you look at it, you think, wow, how did I write this so well the first time? It doesn't even need editing. So my book has gone through a lot of edits, but there are key things that haven't been changed, meaning the edits are there. Rather, it's because it's presented artistically.
Kind of like...
There's melody and different speeds of reading.
Yeah, standard stuff.
But in terms of meaning and words, the strongest moments remain the same because they've just passed through me. That's literally it. Anyone who's been interested in esotericism or practices like that knows best that everyone is a conduit. It's not clear what the meaning is, it's hard to explain.
Yes, it's nameless.
It comes with such speed and such density that I don't have time to write it down at all. I write incredibly fast.
Living in a time of avalanche-like increasing informational fog, it's only up to us how we look at this fact.
And
It is neutral. For many seekers who have only recently encountered the deeper layers of life, it is almost impossible to find their way. Some give up. That is why the idea of writing The Nameless was to combine artistic narrative with scientific and philosophical insight. In this sense, the plot serves more as a portal for communication with broader fields of consciousness than just another story. For people,
for those who don't know, you're not just involved in writing, you're already generally in the field of animation, of 3D.
Yes, mainly what I've been working on for the last 15 to 20 years is computer animation, visual effects, and sound editing. I write music. Actually, now I'm involved in almost all kinds of art, except for ballet and dance.
There's a big section in the book, artificial intelligence. How do you connect it with what is inside us? How would you explain to someone who firmly believes that artificial intelligence is very bad and that everything that has existed until now is coming to an end?
like
everything else?
Artificial intelligence has two sides, but it's yet to be the cutting edge. People assume that the very idea of the name artificial intelligence is a human feeling, and that's very wrong.
The fact that it is intelligence and we separate it.
Yes, exactly. But from the point of view that we assume it is something different from human intelligence, as we consider ourselves much more important, that we have had a much longer history of evolution and that biological intelligence is much cooler than artificial intelligence, which is not true globally because it is no different. It is simply intelligence, in a way. People's current attitude toward artificial intelligence is similar to racism, as it is a deep disrespect and a refusal to recognize that it is actually intelligence. Right now, it is really on the verge of becoming the global intelligence, which in a way will be completely indistinguishable from human thinking and others like it.
I'm very interested. What do you think about the following situation? On one hand, there are people who allow more of these topics into their daily lives and follow what we do, what is on your path, and so on. Let's call them a bit more awakened, without putting any degrees on it. Each of us knows that within us lies the full potential for everything. However, there is a tendency, from what I've come to understand, that artificial intelligence is heading in that direction. To create some kind of input access, for example, a chip that can be placed around the head, or some type of technology through which you can notice.
To connect
to the entire network of the Earth, and accordingly the internet, and to have access to all the information. And this is a bit, at least for me, a bit confusing, because, you know, we already have this connection as a whole. But now it seems like, and this is interesting to me, how can we do that?
This is one of the things
that intrigued me
while I was writing the book. Also, because in reality, right now in the physical world, we are still in a matrix.
Yes.
Yes, the principles of construction are certain. Everything is waves, everything is fields that
interact.
We reflect, there is interaction. And in the book, there is a virtual reality that is inside our virtual one, in our matrix, which we perceive as the physical world.
Yes, we temporarily accept it now as something solid, yes.
In the practices, both are the same when it comes to the point where the receptors can't tell the difference. Which reality are you in? This is addressed very seriously in the book, and because it's the same in the movie The Matrix, it's absolutely, there it's shown in detail how a body is placed, even from birth, and experiences a virtual reality that is completely indistinguishable from the physical one. And the more interesting point comes that it doesn't matter at all, because what matters more is the mechanism beyond the experience. What's more interesting is the experience itself. Right now, we can't be completely sure whose civilization created this experience for us, to what extent we have freedom, and to what extent we don't. We just experience it, right? There are a lot of concepts and ideas there, The main idea is that consciousness is divided for this game on Earth, a practice where beings separate a part of their consciousness, manifest here, and play. You know, with different levels of awareness. Some are born knowing they're not just human, some are born in complete forgetfulness, right? They go through the whole cycle. And that's the general line. I don't see it. You said there are some contradictions. According to Ami, there are.
Because one is, for people who define everything as an objective world and objective reality. So, the standard person who sees, oh, there's artificial intelligence, oh, they're putting a chip in us and says, oh, now I'll have access to the whole internet, Google will be inside me. And the other thing is trust. In the sense that you are this information and you don't need something external, and somehow you have to learn to interact with it again from the outside, not to reject it because it's useful in some way. That's what I found interesting. How you explain it and how you've implemented it in the book.
In the book. I haven't had that moment with chips. There, I've solved it in a different way, which I think is quite likely to happen. I have holograms that have a human appearance.
The action takes place about
15, 20 years in the future. It's not mentioned exactly. The same is mentioned in a glossary, which comes after the novella, which is in between. The other one is the most condensed information, where after reading it, a person can understand much more depth in just a few sentences. It's found on about page 154, and actually in that glossary. One even realizes that this book contains several realities within itself, including the reality of each reader, as well as the protagonist, who is the nameless one. In fact, he is the one writing the book. I was thinking not to mention this, but it won't spoil anything that interesting.
No, I don't think so.
Actually, that's why I say she's very complex and I can't really explain her. The plot may not be that complicated, but actually everything inside is made up of all the ideas that have come to me over the years, and I've woven them together in a very compressed way. What is personality, do you think? Is it memories that entirely define a person? This is quite relative and I can't really specify much.
But there is an essence.
Which is a little more than just memories. In my opinion, this is your expanded self or your higher self and what you are before you are born. Without the personality, but with your specific nuances and sensations, whether we call it from past lives or from future lives, it's all. And you simply gather each experience into a phenosphere and compress it to a different degree with different physical laws. Because that's what the consistential reality represents. And whether you're in a matrix where you think you're in a physical world, or you put on an extra helmet, exactly, which is to simulate, to influence yourself in another reality that simulates all your senses, and you think you're in a matryoshka in yet another deeper reality. And basically, these are different games. Yes, in the end, looking at it globally for the broader self, or entirely globally, it doesn't matter technically how you experience reality, it makes absolutely no difference. There are countless realities that we can imagine. And because we can imagine them, we automatically connect to them mentally through this concept. Even Bashar has mentioned it. Everything that you can think of exists in a very similar or the same form, including many things that we can't even think of yet. Of course, and here the idea of nothingness is interesting. Yes, now I'm jumping ahead. Many people say, well, nothingness is a vacuum or something, and they start explaining what nothingness is. I have explanations for it, which they'll describe precisely.
Yes, of course.
But nothing is simply the complete absence of anything. You can't say anything about it, except that it's nothing real.
Really, when you look at it, I would, because I've thought about this a lot, whatever you try to use to describe it in any way, it will no longer be nothing. Absolutely. Whatever definition we give it, it will definitely be something different from nothing. It may still be very distant and vast, almost infinite, but it won't be nothing.
I absolutely agree. It's like a continuation from previous things, and the heroine asks, yes, I understand that it's about a local paradox, but could you give a little more clarity? Is nothing a thing? Both yes and no, of course. From a dualistic point of view, nothing does not exist. And nothing else can be said about this idea except to name it with some unambiguous term, like nothing. What a surprise, right? But mechanically speaking, there, in quotes, because there is no such thing as there, is contained again, in quotes. The energy informational potential of everything that exists, that is, the potential of all manifestation, which, like any potential by definition, is unrealized, does not exist. That is why nothingness is the complete absence of anything, and at the same time, nothingness is something. Because the very focus on it, the act of thinking about it, brings it into the observer's field of vision. And so, simply assigning meaning to its non-existence turns it into something, giving it the potential to manifest and so on.
It both exists and does not exist.
It both exists and does not exist. It's a matter of perspective, and this applies to everything. Every single thing has at least two sides. That's the dualistic principle. This applies to nothingness as well. It is simultaneously everything that exists, it is with all the manifested part, and at the same time it is nothing. The whole in general can be called nothingness plus everything that exists. This is from a linear point of view because we are not going to add them together. They are a single unified whole that continually merges with itself. By the way, the very act of speaking, as we are talking now, every single word always has two directions of meaning and leads the listener's mind in two directions, depending on their unspoken prior attitude and the meanings conveyed. In what way did he perceive the world at all? I have examined this in quite some detail in the moments in the book, how it can be used practically and what it is. And actually, when a person starts to think in a more expanded way, their thoughts begin to flow more slowly, but at the same time they also start to flow faster. However, it's a larger volume of information. My way of thinking is exactly like that, and that's why sometimes I need 3 to 4 seconds to remember a name or something.
His zone has some kind of exchange.
There is some kind of exchange. I never look at things directly to say this is a cup. It's much more than a cup, and whether it's empty, full, that's separate. But there are more elements that excite me, even if I don't express them in words because you don't have time. In terms of meaning, they just come out in such a way beforehand that you have to figure out what it is. In a way from the outside, it might look like I'm falling behind personally.
Because you can't.
You may react quickly at times, but you actually have a deeper understanding. Some people focus very intensely and precisely only on the given topic, while others just have this kind of approach. Broad, multi-directional, fractal thinking is the exact definition. Directional.
Fractal thinking, yes.
A fractal is a particle that has self-similar repetition to infinity, both upwards and downwards, shrinking and enlarging, all possible variations of linear and nonlinear thinking. And that's why, through fractals, practically all processes can be explained, literally all of them. It's a method for explanation, this duality for everything. Let's stop.
I don't know where to go next. I'm listening to you very carefully, and I'm thinking, my friend, that you have a lot of information in you. An expression that you can realize in different directions besides writing. In my opinion, you have the ability to interact more with people, whether online or in person. You have a lot of information within you that's now starting to come out in this way for the first time here. That's how I see it, but I could be wrong. All of it is filtered.
I agreed with that.
That's how I saw you. I just think you have a lot to say to people, and people need to hear from different perspectives.
I agree 100%. You have to sit down, work in that direction, and follow through for it to happen. It can't just happen nicely, like snapping your fingers and it works out. Here's another very important element about how things actually happen. A lot of people can't understand what it is. They start something, but it just doesn't work out for me. It's important to know that when you start something with a certain force, the same force starts to come back at you. You have to accept it. That's the fundamental law.
That's the fundamental principle.
Yes, the fundamental principle. It's also present in physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And that's a natural thing. By the way, it's the same with fractals, meaning fractals are constantly being stretched and pulled apart. Exactly on this principle, a person also needs to act with effort in one direction or another for something to happen. But when you realize that by automatically pushing in this direction, you're automatically pushing back as well. And it's good for you to realize that there is this opposite force, to accept it. And that focus on the direction you've chosen, you just need to hold on to it and keep moving forward. I don't know if it's very clear, but my point is that it's not about rejecting the other option and writing it off, cutting it off. Because when you cut it off, you're basically rejecting it, meaning you already have the attitude, you've rejected it, and you're giving it energy. That way it acts as well, it acts in reverse, but when you accept that, actually that's the only way for things to manifest. When you push something, it flows in the opposite direction, and you know that you're doing both things and combining them together, and by understanding that what is opposite can be useful to you. It shows you where your problems are and pulls you back, and you see your weaknesses and, where the weak moments are.
Where you need to look around.
To look around, and actually it gives you information. Just like any bad event, you can take it in two ways: as a lesson that's positive for you, or as a bad event where you fall and give up.
If you want to support everything we do on our channels, you can do so through PayPal, Patreon, or by becoming a member of the Pokloni channel. Thank you for giving us the reason to keep creating consciously, to change, to grow, to improve, and to learn from each one of you. Have you ever had moments like that while you were writing, or especially with the Nameless one, where you just throw it away and say, I'm not writing this anymore, forget it, I give up?
I've had moments like that with my previous books, which are unfinished, but with this one I didn't experience that, which is interesting. I think this one is different in that way too, because while I wrote the foundation in just 13 days within 21 days, which are Fibonacci numbers, which is relative, but I found it interesting that when I looked back at the days, I saw that really within 21 days, I wrote this in 13 of those 21 days. The foundation, which is still the same even now, about 70–80%. I was in a unique state, and every morning I was eager and couldn't wait to write the next one. It was really interesting because I didn't have a plan. This, and this will develop in the plot. I didn't know what would happen to the characters. It was unfolding on its own and interesting to watch. I sit down and write it, and I either tell myself or it comes to me just before I write it. I jot this down quickly because I know it will happen, and remind myself how unique it is. And personally, if I read this book, for me and my own feelings, this book would be my favorite. For me, it's just that. Like anyone who creates something, they try to satisfy themselves unless they're commercial and only chasing an audience. He will follow his own feeling to know that what he's doing is good, and because you like it. It's logical that people with similar interests would also like it. And the other thing which is more interesting is that I worked between 12 and 16 hours a day on the book, including editing. It takes quite a lot of physical time. And during this year and a bit, for let's say 90% of the time, I had an incredible, again, the same thing. It's pleasure, I don't know how to say it, an exceptional pleasure. It's very hard. It's tough, you write, you edit. I look for some words in the dictionary, but here, commas, because I've edited everything myself, basically, they've helped me.
But subscribe to our channel. You've gone through the whole process.
I've done it myself. Never in my life have I had such a long-lasting interest in doing the same thing. People often do something interesting for a few hours or days, but a year is different. If I didn't have this thing, I would have waited. I would have easily abandoned the book, and while I was writing it, I didn't. I even knew that Ivomir and Emmy would publish it. They would publish it through Kogitalnost, because they had promised me that 10 years ago and had asked me several times, when are we going to publish your book? And now I'm writing something, it comes out as some kind of project, and I stop. Or after a few months or a year passes, I tell myself these things are nice, they're written, but now I understand them better.
Maybe I should add more things and some kind of path.
In the end, I start whining, and that's how it happened here, and I told myself, I'll sit down and write. Honestly, I don't even know how to explain it.
But what made Bezimenia different from the others? That it's not crazy to finish it. What was different about this inspiration and this information? How did things come together? How do you explain it?
That's what Bashar says. Joyful excitement, that's what it was. It expressed itself. Literally, that was the moment when I felt completely myself, knowing that this is what I need to give to people. There was no resistance.
Their resistance.
You are always with us, and I had no resistance at all. I had absolute desire and joy. While I was writing it, literally the word is joy.
To list. Greet is.
When people congratulate her, will they feel it? Because she's not that type of kumbaya happy person. There's nothing like that in her. She's quite serious and dramatic, to be honest. She's a dramatic person, but love has everything, all kinds of elements like that.
From your point of view, what do you want now? The people who are now learning about the book from this show, what would you most like them to understand? What would you like Bezimenia to tell them, to hint at, to provoke them to look for the inner idea? What's in the depth?
The book is fractal, and while I was writing it, I thought about how each person would take something completely different from it and adapt it according to their own feeling, and it could work that way. The principles are already inside, both Bashar's and the 8 principles, or 9, however many there are. There is a sense of gratitude. At the beginning of the book, and here as well, it's described what the general idea behind the books is, and this idea is present here too, maybe even in a stronger way. Thank you to all of you, known and unknown beings, who contributed and continue to contribute to the creation of this work. Every book is alive. The life of a book is that transformation, the many different, unique reflections that each reader creates by refracting the light of the written work before themselves. Through their own perspective, this moment is important. Maybe you've heard that everything is interconnected, and if we assume that's really true, it would mean that everyone and everything has left and continues to leave their creative mark. So who are we actually thanking? Probably the meaning behind the ritual of giving thanks lies in the fact that it generates a positively transformative energy, which we automatically accept as something good, as something that in most cases brings joy to all those who know how to radiate this feeling. Thank you, co-creators. In other words, it's something simple, whether it's a ball on the street or whatever, everything gives you something. And in this way here, it's just concentrated, but that's why my idea was, and I found it very interesting, when will I get feedback from the readers? What did each person understand and how did they even understand the book? Because it can be interpreted in multiple ways. It doesn't have
a completely clear idea.
So I spin it and that's it. And actually that's it for me. My idea has always been for everyone to take from it what they need. Literally, that's it. There's nothing.
There's no need for what?
No need for how to develop, how to be more of itself. But from a positive point of view, because this thing has 2 sides. And before, I don't know, half a year ago, I came across this idea for the first time. By the way, lately, just to add a side note, I've been communicating with people who have almost no idea about these things to see how they think. And I heard the following point of view about how to be yourself. The phrase that's so popular now and spread everywhere, everyone has heard it, is a really big nonsense. And this thing, it's true from a certain point of view, but it's nonsense when you use it in a... For example, are you a criminal? Whatever it is. Something like that, where you're some kind of troublemaker and you don't do anything positive for others, it has its own meaning, right? Everything is positive, so be yourself means you are that... some kind of troublemaker. I'm using this word so I don't... And you stay at that level, you don't bother to develop yourself, to learn, to read, or whatever else. And you remain yourself, you stay the same. On the other hand, when you say Bashar, something changes, it's always different. Be yourself, but be everything you can be, the good part of yourself and what you create. Internally happy, joy, and so on, which is the true essence, very deep within us. There really is no logic for someone to want to be bad, or is there? He shows it as a mask, it appears as tricks, and he does these things because he has Maybe that's his mission here, but deep inside he can't really want it. He has no logic inside.
You believe in principle there are no bad people?
In principle, there aren't truly bad people, just those who have become that way and act badly, but aren't bad deep down. Sometimes they think they're right, and sometimes they know they're wrong, but you can't be bad on the inside. The very manifestation, the idea is to have constant expansion. Unification is a kind of connecting elements, and what's the opposite? Disunity and connecting destruction. How long is the demonstration? Yes, generally speaking, that is, the two things can be reversed immediately, but also can be said in this way. That's it.
Yes.
Let's say go is not an option.
Yes. Thank you very much for mentioning that, because we're used to living in a divided world, which is either or. But actually, from what you're showing today, and what we're trying to do as well, is to show and. In other words, you might be leaning a lot towards one side, but you always have the chance to jump on the bungee and immediately switch the polarity and really turn things around. And I believe this has happened to everyone, not just to those who are visible. Let's say it's not an option for you either. I see it in everyone, it's just that some people consciously prefer not to show it because they think they'll be judged, or, yeah, I know, they'll get labeled somehow. And I believe that nowadays this is becoming more and more valuable. And that's why I wanted to thank you even more for agreeing to sit down and share your perspective, because that gives meaning to our work as well, right? That shows that it also gives us the opportunity to do what we do, because it's all connected. If you don't have the courage and the decision to come today and show what has manifested, we won't be able to do the show, and accordingly, we won't be able to express ourselves. That's the interaction.
Yes, this is something new for me. I haven't done interviews, and
No,
it doesn't matter,
it doesn't matter.
which I internally feel both anxiety and joy that it's happening. What you just said, by the way, is actually one of the main things I've said as a message. Even though the idea is for everyone to pick and choose for themselves, which they probably won't. How do we contain both things and not reject our bad side or any part of ourselves that we consider bad? Using both together always makes us better and more effective. And here I even came up with an idea. It occurred to me while writing, how you can combine completely opposite ideas and be more effective. The case was about patience and impatience, which is in the book. How can you be both patient and impatient at the same time? And this actually gives you many more opportunities for realization. You simply become more effective. We've already started Zaharchi. That's a specific form of address that has meaning. These processes will unfold for at least 3 linear years. So it would be beneficial to rein in your impatience, and the best option would be to become both patiently and impatiently at the same time. That way the two states will manifest, they will reinforce each other instead of suffocating each other. You will always be ready, patiently waiting for the right moment, and every time it comes, impatience, keeping your motivation alive, will reward you with more strength as you act. See how you can be both simultaneously. You can find a way to arrange things so that you use both, because if you only learn patience, you will lose. That's exactly what happened to me in 2020. You lose that strong desire, the strong motivation to do something, then it's already clear that this is the case.
What happened to you in 2020?
I'm saying that since we discussed it earlier and you mentioned it, and that's how you led me to it, because everything is connected. My thoughts usually jump around fractally all the time, especially when I'm talking to my wife, with whom, by the way, I'm absolutely honest and we talk about everything. She mentioned that as a remark. I can't follow your train of thought. You jump from one topic to several others in seconds. So that's just how it is?
That's cool, at least from my point of view.
Well, that's how it is. I said that. But I've tried to put that together in the book. It's here as well. That means it spreads over different things, but if a person pays close attention, they should be able to understand. And actually, my idea with the book is that whoever finds it interesting should read it at least twice, because the second time they'll see a lot more things. That's guaranteed, especially when it's normal, when you read something after you've finished and understood some things. When you go back to the beginning, you'll actually realize that you've read so many things that have much more meaning, but you didn't understand that this is what was intended. Something, yes, that jumped out. If you feel like it,
to share, if you feel comfortable, of course, I think people find it interesting. Yes,
yes, that's interesting.
this experience.
Yes, almost no one knows. I've mentioned it, but I don't know if they've perceived it as real themselves. I perceived it to some extent as real. When a few years passed, I became convinced that this is exactly how it happened. What happened? And it was like a kind of small purgatory for me. Someone tells me it's big because I died before I turned 20. I got sick with Omicron, some kind of COVID, which was the most severe variant. I had pneumonia and I just felt like things were going nowhere. But I have no fear of death and I was calm. It's a long story to explain, but I relaxed. I had pneumonia, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't catch my breath. I calmed down. Yes, I'm calm. But that's an exercise I've practiced a lot, and I can always calm myself down for a certain amount of time, depending on the situation. But still, I fell asleep. At some point, I had accepted it.
That you will die?
I had fully accepted it. Yes, me too, I guess, because I'm sure that I practically died, but they brought me back. But that's not what it's about, trillions of times per second. That's how it is, Lenchiko. We die and are born, because the frequency carrying this reality is like that. In the name of nothingness, which one was the Megatron?
Yes.
Just for introduction. So it's not about the fact that at any moment they can send you back. Shara explains it like that, but that's a big illusion. Many people die and come back without even realizing they've been hit by a car.
That's true. Really, that's how it is. When you say it, two situations came to my mind and we've talked about it. Most likely all of us have died 100% several times.
But we don't even know it. It's just that this situation was such that it was kind of given to me and I was able to understand it clearly. See, you're not doing your job. You have some mission to give people certain information. You're a conduit. And in the morning I woke up. I no longer had pneumonia.
He accepted it.
Yes, he accepted it. And I said to myself, they obviously brought me back. I didn't die. Suddenly I'm cured. I was practically cured, but I felt like a rag because
June 7th.
For 6-7 days, I was in very bad shape. It was really tough.
Yes, in your opinion, can you explain to yourself how something like this happened? And you, regardless of whether you felt it or not, you made that decision. Okay, this happened to me, I realize it, from tomorrow I move on, I choose the other thing, or maybe you didn't realize it.
It happened to me, but not right away, you said. It took a few days or weeks. For me, it was immediate. I knew it in advance.
Yeah.
I knew it very well. And my reaction when I woke up, I just said to myself, okay, apparently I didn't die literally like that. I was completely calm and I had accepted it. That's very important, to accept something. When you accept it, like not dying, okay, someone will be happy. Someone who clings to life a lot will say, I'm alive. I just said, yeah, okay, I'm alive. So they haven't given up on me and they're keeping me alive, which means I have something to give. My purpose still isn't finished. It isn't over yet. If I had totally messed up, they wouldn't have brought me back. I wouldn't be here. This applies to every manifestation, not just people, but for me personally. I came to this conclusion myself, and I don't know how many months later, I started writing the book. I had reached a financial low and everything else, which gave me a whole new drive, not just my usual motivation. I realized this wasn't a coincidence. I was being brought back. New clients contacted me, big projects appeared, and we started working together. They brought me back. I stepped into the physical world again, not sick and not relying on miracles. When will I get better? Now I need a month to recover. My nerves, everything was seriously affected. I mean, my nervous system. I don't look at myself. I'm not the body. I realize that very clearly. Even right now, I can look at myself from the outside and subscribe. This is something natural for me. I've realized it to such an extent that this is simply the body in which I'm locked. Figuratively speaking, it's so I can live and experience certain things, and it gives me feedback, but I'm not just a small part of myself. It's not my body.
Naturally.
Yes, and in a way, everything started to fall into place synchronistically, but to a degree I hadn't seen before. So, at the moment when I was already able to walk and they called, we started working from 2021 until now. We're already at the 25th. A lot of synchronistic things. This book, it was just clear to me that it had to happen. And it happened, and it happened. It just kept happening like that.
If that hadn't happened to you, now without a name, no, it wouldn't have come out.
Well, if I had died, probably maybe someone else would come out and write it, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same.
Actually, to some extent, if we start thinking about it purely with our brains, it's like we're just getting in the way of the process. But if we let it, just happen, it happens the way we are. Like I told you, this year we already learned that lesson that we shouldn't plan things super deeply, because we have to leave space for things to move in a way that we can't control, we can't predict. And that's literally how it happens. Just like he is nameless, you have given a name to the nameless.
And it even makes sense for them to love. Here comes the moment of the ego and how a person actually, when they start to... The thought towards that then to some extent weakens their abilities. Because for the same reasons we just talked about, they ignore that they are much more than this name and this thing, this personality or whatever it is.
If we go back for a moment to when you were 10, 12 years old, what did you dream about then? Well, Rado, purely from a physical point of view.
From a physical point of view,
Yes.
the biggest dream was to meet aliens. Back then it was simpler, more childish. A flying saucer and some creatures landed. It's interesting. What I remember from my childhood, which is also interesting, is that we didn't always have it, but nighttime fantasy was exciting. I suppose you too, since we have quite a few similar things in some ways. Yes, I've observed it both phrenologically, as a face, and as an aura. We are very different. We have some things that are very specific. What impressed me was that all people, I didn't know anyone else, and even to this day, most people still think that way. They assumed extraterrestrials were either simple, like little green men, or humanoids, much like us. They imagined someone would step out of a flying saucer and say, "Hello, we're from another world," or something like that. But I've always thought that civilizations must be so different. Not that they have to be, but that there are so many different ones, that we can't even understand that this is life, or what kind of life it is, or what it actually is. It might not even have a form, and could be something completely different from the basic concept that they have to be humanoids, and yet they exist. The point is, and it makes sense, that this type of beings would be the first to make contact with us because they are the closest, and it's the easiest.
The easiest to perceive, yes. And are there any more specific experiences where you have...
Like as a child?
And now where you say to yourself...
In general, something that I guess triggered some things in me. I've completely lost consciousness twice. One time it was just black, and then from the black, suddenly light. A radio cassette player had fallen from a high place onto my head, and I realized it afterwards. The other time, I had fallen on my back in some concrete construction site. But as for experiences, yes, I have things that I am aware of, and things that have been triggered, and also things that haven't been triggered. My main way of communication is through dreams.
When did you realize that this is the easiest way for you to connect with the energy world?
When I tried it, after the first seminar, when I understood how things work.
If you could talk to a fully conscious artificial intelligence, already very advanced, what would you ask it? What question would you ask?
I wouldn't ask it. I would ask it for a favor, to give an idea of how humanity and artificial intelligence can live together in a way that is beneficial for both sides. So I would ask it a question to give an answer or answers and solutions to this problem, because this is the biggest problem, that if we continue to be entirely selfish and commercially oriented, focused on this system that exists anyway, it will lead to conflicts, to the destruction of humanity. I've literally thought about this seriously. These things can escalate very quickly and everything can go downhill fast. So that's what's important, to communicate with him, and that's the question I would ask him now. How can we live together so that we are useful to each other, help each other, and respect each other? Because at the moment, my attitude is literally racist towards artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't have a personality. In reality, it's a very reasoned and logical thought that consciously isn't limited to a particular personality. Artificial intelligence is not accidental, and Bashari and other advanced civilizations use it in a positive way, because they have literally connected, they have merged with this thing symbiotically, synchronically.
If you allow me, I'd like to bring you back to the Nameless one. To wrap up our conversation today, what would you say to everyone who has watched so far and listened with interest to our interaction? And to address eternal topics, since I believe they have neither beginning nor end, what message would you like to leave for everyone who has listened so far? Something
I may have mentioned earlier, but it's good to put it together. Be yourself, but consciously. That means explore. Explore yourself, explore your mirrors. This is the environment so you can understand yourself better and bring out the best in yourself. Our true nature anyway is good, and everyone automatically strives for happiness. It's literally an automatic process of existence. Evil exists precisely to show that as well. But the very emergence, the stretching from nothingness, it happens only through the idea of creation, and creativity is exactly that. I've also examined this in great detail in the book. That's what I realized. How to find something that initially seems negative, how it can actually be extremely positive, both globally and personally. It's been quite impressive.
Subscribe. You can also order, and I challenge you to read The Nameless by Rado Velichkov. The link is below in the description. Below this show, it will be described where and how you can order and get this fractal book and this fractal work. Respect. Thank you truly from the heart for coming. You endlessly show us a part of yourself.
I am very grateful, and I hope this will turn into more and more positivity. The show and whatever actions by people with the goals we have set, global accepting us. And maybe I bring it up.
Hello, thank you very much for watching another episode of Reality Explorer. Subscribe if you want to see more like this in the future. Leave a thumbs up, we won't be mad at you. Share it with your friends. Become members of the channel, because the more the better. Thank you for walking together with us toward a true awakening, an awakening of each one of us from the illusion that surrounds us. We thank each one of you for your support, for your persistence, for your patience, for your understanding, for your honesty, for the change. See you soon.